Wait. They told the judge I didn't know my own name anymore. My daughter said I was too far gone to understand money, property, or family. My son nodded beside her like a grieving man. My wife wiped her eyes with a tissue she had folded before she walked into the courtroom. They were all lying, and the one mistake they made was thinking an old man in a wheelchair couldn't hear, couldn't remember, and couldn't fight back. My name is Russell Whitaker. I'm 68 years old, and until last spring, I lived on a small horse property outside Franklin, Tennessee, about 25 minutes south of Nashville. 12 acres, a white farmhouse, a red barn my father built in 1978, and a gravel driveway that sounded like rain when a truck rolled over it. I wasn't rich in the way people on television are rich. I didn't own jets or vacation homes in Aspen, but I had done well. I started Whitaker Custom Millwork with one table saw, one rented garage, and more stubbornness than common sense. By the time I turned 65, we were building cabinets, stair rails, custom doors, and trim packages for half the luxury homes going up in Williamson County. I had 32 employees, 2 CNC machines, a finishing shop, and contracts that kept us busy 8 months out. My wife, Denise, had been married to me for 41 years. We had 2 children. Our son, Brandon, 40, worked at the company in sales, if you want to call it work. Mostly he knew how to wear a polo shirt with our logo on it and promise builders things my shop had to scramble to deliver. My daughter, Melissa, 37, lived in Brentwood and ran what she called a lifestyle consulting business. I never fully understood what that meant, but I understood the bills she sent me when her brand needed a boost. Then there was my grandson, Caleb, Melissa's boy, 19 years old, quiet, polite, studying nursing at Columbia State. He came by on Sundays when he could, helped me feed the horses, fixed my phone when I pressed the wrong thing, and still called me Grandpa even when his mother rolled her eyes and told him he was too old for that. I loved my family. That's important, family. I need you to understand that. I was not some bitter old man looking for trouble. I paid for Brandon's first house down payment. I paid Melissa's divorce attorney. I bought Denise the kitchen she wanted, the SUV she liked, the diamond bracelet she cried over at our 40th anniversary dinner. I gave because I thought giving was what a man did when he loved people. What I didn't know was that some people don't see love when you give. They see access. The first sign came on a Wednesday morning in March. I was walking from the barn to the house when my right leg went soft underneath me. Not pain, not weakness, exactly. More like someone had reached inside my body and unplugged the wire. The feed bucket hit the ground. Oats scattered across the mud. My right hand curled toward my chest like it belonged to somebody else. I remember trying to call for Denise, but the word came out broken. By the time the ambulance got there, I could hear everything, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. My thoughts were clear. That was the cruel part. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew my name, the date, the county, the last 4 digits of my social security number. I knew I had left the barn light on, but when the EMT leaned over and asked me to smile, half my face wouldn't move. It was a stroke. Not the kind that takes you away all at once, thank God, but bad enough to scare everybody. They took me to Williamson Medical Center, then transferred me to a rehabilitation facility in Nashville called Harrow Creek Recovery. Nice place on the outside. Brick building, trimmed hedges, lobby that smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. For the first few days, I couldn't speak more than a few words at a time. My right side was weak. My face drooped. My speech came out slow and muddy. But my mind was there. Every bit of it. The doctors knew that. The nurses knew that. Caleb knew it the second he came in, because he sat beside my bed, held up 3 fingers and said, "Grandpa, blink twice if you understand me." I blinked twice. He smiled so hard his eyes got wet. But my wife and children didn't want to see what was still there. Or maybe they saw it and decided it was inconvenient. On the 5th day, Denise came into my room with Brandon and Melissa. I was sitting in a recliner by the window, a blanket over my knees, pretending to watch a cooking show with the volume low. They thought I was asleep. That became their favorite mistake. Brandon spoke first. "Mom, we can't keep waiting. The shop is already unstable." The shop was not unstable. The shop had survived recessions, lumber spikes, bad employees, and one builder who tried to pay me in a bass boat. It was not going to fall apart because I spent a week learning how to say water correctly. Denise sighed. Your father can't sign anything right now. Melissa said, that's why we need emergency authority. The doctor said he has cognitive impairment. No, sweetheart. The doctor said my speech was impaired. Those are not the same thing. Brandon lowered his voice. If we get power of attorney, I can move fast. I already talked to Kavanaugh Homes. They'd buy the shop equipment and customer list. We could lease the building back or sell it outright. My heart started beating so hard I thought the monitor might tell on me. Sell the equipment, sell the customer list, sell the company I built with my hands while I was sitting 6 feet away under a blue blanket. Melissa said, and the farm? Denise didn't answer right away. Then she said, the farm is too much for him now. Even if he recovers some, he can't live there alone. We should list it before the market cools. Brandon gave a little laugh. Dad always said land was security. Guess he was right. Melissa said, how much do you think everything comes to? That was the first time I felt something in me go cold. Not sad, not angry, cold. Denise said, between the business, the farm, the retirement accounts, maybe 4 million, maybe more, if Brandon handles the sale right. Brandon handles the sale right. My son had once sold a $14,000 cabinet package at a loss because he forgot to include installation. But sure, let Brandon handle the sale right. Melissa said, we need to make sure Caleb doesn't get in his head. He keeps acting like Grandpa is still in there. There was a pause. Then Denise said softly, Caleb is sweet, but he's 19. He doesn't understand quality of life. Quality of life. Brothers and sisters, listen to me when I tell you this. When people start using soft words around hard greed, pay attention. Quality of life meant sell the farm. Emergency authority meant take control. Cognitive impairment meant shut me up before I could object. I wanted to stand. I wanted to throw that blanket off my knees and tell them every one of them ought to be ashamed. But my right hand wouldn't grip the chair arm, and my tongue felt like wet cotton in my mouth. So I did the only thing I could do. I closed my eyes. Melissa whispered, see? He's not tracking anything. And that, right there, probably saved everything I had left, because from that moment on, I listened. 3 days later, they brought in a woman named Paige Holt, a lawyer Denise said was helping with temporary paperwork. Paige wore a gray suit and spoke to me like I was a child who had wandered into traffic. Mr. Whitaker, do you understand that your family is trying to help you? I looked at her. I nodded slowly. She smiled too fast. Good. We just need to make sure bills are paid and decisions can be made while you recover. She placed papers on the rolling table beside my bed. I could see the words at the top. Durable power of attorney. Not temporary. Durable. I looked at Denise. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Paige put a pen in my left hand. You can make an X if writing is difficult. My left hand shook, but not because of the stroke. I stared at the paper. Then I let the pen slide out of my fingers and fall to the floor. Paige's smile tightened. Brandon muttered, for God's sake. Caleb walked in right then with a paper cup of ice chips. What's going on? He asked. Denise turned sharp. This is adult business, Caleb. He looked at the paper. Then he looked at me. Grandpa doesn't want to sign. Melissa said, he doesn't know what he wants. Caleb stepped closer to my chair. Ask him. Paige gave a polished little laugh. We already did. No, Caleb said. Ask him yes or no. That boy bent down in front of me, steady as a post, and said, Grandpa, do you want to sign that paper? I looked him dead in the eye and shook my head. The room went quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Guilty quiet. Paige gathered the papers and said they could revisit the matter later. Brandon walked out, cursing under his breath. Melissa followed him. Denise stayed behind, looking at me like I had embarrassed her. You're making this harder than it has to be, she whispered. I tried to speak. It came out rough, slow, broken, not dead. Her face changed for half a second. Then she patted my shoulder and said, Nobody said you were. That night, after everyone left, a nurse named Angela came in to check my vitals. She was maybe 50, with kind eyes and no patience for foolishness. Caleb had told her what happened. She adjusted my blanket and leaned close enough that the camera in the corner probably couldn't catch her mouth. "Mr. Whitaker," she said quietly, "do you have a lawyer who is not connected to your family?" I blinked twice. She put a notepad on my tray. "Can you write a name?" My left hand was clumsy. The letters looked like they'd been dragged through gravel, but I wrote it. Elimorgan. Eli had been my business attorney for 23 years. He handled contracts, leases, partnership agreements, and once got me out of a nightmare involving a supplier who delivered maple instead of white oak and swore nobody could tell the difference. Eli could tell the difference. Eli could smell a bad board from across a courtroom. Angela looked at the name, nodded, and said, "I'll help you make a call in the morning." That was the beginning. The next day, Eli Morgan walked into my rehab room wearing boots, a navy blazer, and the expression of a man who had already decided somebody was going to regret wasting his time. He did not speak to Denise first. He did not ask Brandon for context. He came straight to me, pulled a chair close, and said, "Russell, do you understand who I am?" I nodded. "Do you want me representing you and only you?" I nodded again. "Do you want your wife, son, or daughter making decisions for you right now?" I shook my head. He looked at Angela. "Please note that." She did. Then Eli opened his briefcase and pulled out a laminated alphabet board, the kind speech therapists use. For the next hour, he asked me questions. I pointed. I nodded. I shook my head. I wrote when I could. By the end of that hour, Eli knew enough to stop my family cold. By the end of that week, he knew enough to start digging. And family, what he found made that conversation in the rehab room look like Sunday school gossip. The first discovery came from my company books. Eli brought in a forensic accountant named Marcy Bell. She was small, silver-haired, and had the cheerful manner of a woman who genuinely enjoyed finding where people hid stolen money. Marcy requested records from Whitaker Custom Millwork under my authority as sole owner. Brandon tried to block her. That was his second mistake. 3 days later, Eli came to Harrow Creek and closed the door behind him. "Russell," he said, "your son has been diverting customer deposits." I closed my eyes. "How much?" My speech therapist would have been proud. The words came out clear enough. Eli sat down. $286,000 that we can prove right now, probably more. Brandon had created a side account under the name WCM Project Services. Close enough to sound legitimate, separate enough to disappear. Certain builders were told deposits had to be wired there for scheduling priority. Then Brandon used the money for credit card debt, a boat loan, and a condo deposit in Gulf Shores. I had spent 40 years building a name that meant quality. My son was selling priority slots like a carnival ticket booth. "There's more," Eli said. Of course there was. Melissa had been billing the company for brand strategy and client experience design. 42 invoices over 18 months. Total amount, $91,000. Not one deliverable. Not one report. Not one meeting anyone remembered attending. Brandon approved every invoice. Denise knew. She had signed off on several because she still had limited administrative access from the years when she helped with payroll. And then came the farm. 2 weeks before my stroke, Denise had met twice with a real estate broker in Brentwood. Not to discuss selling if I died. Not to discuss options someday. She had already requested a private valuation and asked how quickly the farm could be marketed if my husband becomes unable to object. Unable to object. Those 3 words sat in my chest like a stone. I remembered building the back fence with my father in the summer of 1982. I remembered Denise planting hydrangeas by the porch after our first child was born. I remembered Brandon learning to ride a pony named Biscuit in that lower pasture. I remembered Melissa crying under the oak tree after her first boyfriend broke her heart. To them, it was an asset. To me, it was my life with roots. But the worst part didn't come from paper. It came from a phone. Caleb brought it to me one evening, his face pale. "Grandpa," he said, "I don't know if I should show you this." "Show me," I mouthed. He had recorded his mother, uncle, and grandmother in the rehab parking lot. He hadn't meant to spy. He said he was walking to his car, and heard my name. Then he hit record because something in his gut told him to. The video was shaky. Mostly pavement, a bumper, Melissa's shoes. But the audio was clear. Brandon said, "If he gets his speech back, we're screwed." Melissa said, "Then we move faster. The guardianship petition is stronger if Dr. Larkin says he's confused." Denise said, "Doctor." "Larkin won't say that." Brandon answered, "Paige knows another doctor." Caleb's hand trembled as I watched. Then Melissa said the sentence that broke something in me I had kept protected for 68 years. "Mom, I love Grandpa, but he had his life. Why should all of us put our futures on hold because he won't let go? He had his life." There it was again. Different words, same grave. I looked up at Caleb. The boy's eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," he said. I reached for his hand with my good left one. It took effort, but I squeezed. "Not your fault." That's what I wanted to say. What came out was, "Good boy," he cried then, quietly, "not for money, not for land, not for the company, for me." And that's when I decided I was done being managed. Eli filed an objection to the guardianship petition before my family even knew I had counsel. He also arranged for an independent neurologist and speech pathologist to evaluate me. Not Dr. Larkin, not Paige Holt's mystery doctor, not anybody Denise could charm in a hallway. Independent. The evaluations took 2 mornings. Exhausting mornings. Questions, memory tests, drawing a clock, identifying pictures, repeating words, explaining scenarios. My speech was still slow. My right hand still didn't work right. But my mind was clean. The neurologist's report said I had expressive aphasia and right-sided weakness, but retained decision-making capacity. Decision-making capacity. Brothers and sisters, there are phrases in this life that sound boring until they save you. While Eli worked the legal side, Marcy followed the money. Caleb became my messenger. Angela made sure nobody got into my room without asking me first, and I played my part. When Denise visited, I let my eyelids droop. When Brandon came in and asked how I was feeling, I gave him a thumbs up with my left hand and watched him relax. When Melissa kissed my forehead and called me Daddy for the first time in about 6 years, I smiled like it didn't make my skin crawl. They thought the storm had passed. It had not. It was gathering documents. The guardianship hearing was set for a Thursday morning at the Williamson County Courthouse. Denise wore navy blue. Brandon wore a charcoal suit he had probably bought with my stolen deposits. Melissa wore pearls. Paige Holt carried a leather binder and moved like a woman who expected old men to fold when paperwork appeared. I arrived in a wheelchair because long walks still wore me out. Caleb pushed me. Eli walked beside us. Marcy sat 2 rows back with a stack of exhibits. Angela came on her day off. That meant more to me than she probably knew. Denise looked surprised when she saw Eli. Brandon looked worried. Melissa looked annoyed. Good. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like television. No thunder. No packed gallery. Just wood benches, fluorescent lights, a judge named Helen Cartwright, and the sound of paper sliding across tables. Paige spoke first. She painted me as a beloved husband and father in tragic decline. She said my family only wanted to protect me. She said I had become confused, vulnerable, unable to manage complex affairs. She said the business required urgent decisions. She said the farm was unsafe. She said Denise should be appointed guardian and Brandon should be given authority over Whitaker custom millwork. I sat there and listened to my life being wrapped in velvet and stolen in plain English. Then Paige called Denise. My wife cried beautifully. I'll give her that. She said she missed the man I used to be. She said I got frustrated easily. She said I didn't understand the burdens placed on the family. She said selling the farm might be painful but necessary. She said Brandon knew the business best. Brandon stared at the table. Melissa dabbed her eyes. Then Paige asked Denise, "Do you believe your husband understands the financial consequences of refusing assistance?" Denise looked right at me. "No," she said. "I don't believe Russell understands much of anything anymore. There are moments when anger comes hot. This one came clear." Judge Cartwright made a note. Then Eli stood. He didn't shout. Good lawyers don't need to. He buttoned his jacket and said, "Your Honor, we oppose every part of this petition, Mr. Whitaker has been evaluated by independent specialists and found competent. But more importantly, We intend to show that this petition is not about care. It is about control of assets. Page objected. The judge allowed him to proceed. Eli called the neurologist first, then the speech pathologist. They explained the difference between speaking slowly and thinking poorly. The judge listened carefully. Denise stopped crying. Then Eli called Marcy Bell. Marcy walked to the stand with her neat little folder and cheerful accountant face. She explained WCM project services. She explained diverted deposits. She explained Melissa's consulting invoices. She explained Denise's approvals. She used words like misappropriation, concealment, unauthorized transfers, and fabricated services. Brandon's face turned gray. Melissa whispered, "Oh my God." Denise stared straight ahead. Then Eli played Caleb's recording. The courtroom filled with Brandon's voice. "If he gets his speech back, we're screwed." Then Melissa. "Why should all of us put our futures on hold because he won't let go?" I did not look at them while it played. I looked at Judge Cartwright. I wanted her to see me hearing it again, not as a confused old man, as a father. When the recording ended, the silence was so complete I could hear the air vent above us. Eli turned toward me. "Mr. Whitaker," he said, "would you like to address the court?" Page stood. "Your Honor, I object. This will be prejudicial and difficult to understand." Judge Cartwright looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "I would like to hear from Mr. Whitaker." Caleb locked the wheelchair brakes. Eli placed a microphone closer. My mouth was dry. My right hand lay useless in my lap. My left hand gripped the armrest. I looked at Denise first, then Brandon, then Melissa. And I spoke slowly. My body failed me. I took a breath. My mind did not. Nobody moved. I continued. I heard. Every plan. I saw. Every paper. I know what they tried to take. Denise began crying again, but the sound had changed. It wasn't performance now. It was fear. I looked at the judge. "I need help. With buttons. With stairs. With some words. I swallowed. I do not need help. Knowing my children stole from me." Brandon lowered his head. Melissa covered her mouth. I turned back to them, because some things need to be said to the people who earned them. "You wanted my farm, my shop, my money." My voice cracked, but I kept going. "You could have asked for love." That one hurt me more than it hurt them. I could feel it. Then I said the line I had practiced with Caleb every night for a week. "I am not finished living." Judge Cartwright denied the guardianship petition right there. Not later, not under advisement, right there. She also ordered temporary protections over my assets, referred the financial findings for further review, and warned Paige Holt that the court took a very dim view of petitions built on selective medical claims. That was the first delivery. The second came the following Monday. I was discharged from Harrow Creek to the farm, not to Denise's care, but with home health support arranged by Eli and approved by me. Denise had moved to a hotel by then. She said she needed space. I told Caleb to let her have all the space she wanted. Brandon showed up at the shop Tuesday morning and found his keycard disabled. Eli had already removed him from all company accounts. Marcy had notified our builders that all future payments must go through verified channels. By noon, Brandon was in my office, red-faced, demanding to see me. I saw him. I had my old foreman, Luis Ortega, in the room with me. Luis had worked for me 29 years and knew more about honor than Brandon ever learned in my house. Brandon started with excuses, then anger, then tears. He said he was under pressure. He said he meant to pay it back. He said I never respected him. He said I made him feel small. I let him empty himself. Then I said, "You stole from men who work overtime." He looked confused. "You didn't steal from me only. You stole from payroll, from suppliers, from every man whose name is on a time card." He started crying harder. I slid a letter across the desk. Termination, civil claim, repayment demand, referral to the district attorney if he failed to cooperate. Dad, please. That word, Dad. It had weight when Caleb said Grandpa. It had no weight in Brandon's mouth that day. You wanted control, I said. Now, control yourself. He left with Luis watching him all the way to the parking lot. Melissa came next. She did not come to apologize. She came to explain. There is a difference. She sat in my kitchen under the same light fixture I installed when she was 12 and told me I didn't understand how expensive life was. She said her business was finally about to turn a corner. She said Brandon told her the invoices were harmless. She said she deserved something because I had always loved the company more than her. That one made me close my eyes. Because there was truth buried in the manipulation. I had worked too much. I had missed things. I had told myself providing was the same as being present. Sometimes it was. Sometimes it wasn't. So, I gave her the truth back. I failed you. Sometimes. Her face softened, just a little. Then I said, but you robbed me. On purpose. The softness vanished. I told her I was removing myself as guarantor from her business credit line. I told her the company would seek repayment for fraudulent invoices. I told her my new estate plan left her $1 and a handwritten note explaining why. She called me cruel. Maybe I was. But cruelty is taking from a man because he cannot speak. Consequence is what happens when he finally can. Denise was last. She came to the farm on a rainy Friday, wearing the green coat I bought her in Chicago 10 years earlier. I watched her walk up the porch steps, like a stranger wearing my memories. She looked older. So did I. We sat in the front room. Caleb stayed in the barn because I asked him to give us privacy but not distance. Denise cried before she spoke. I was scared, she said. I nodded. I didn't know how to handle all of it. I nodded again. Brandon pushed. Melissa panicked. Paige said it was normal. I waited. She twisted her wedding ring. I never wanted to hurt you. That was when I finally spoke. You wanted me quiet. She flinched. Russell. I shook my head. You knew I was in there. She covered her face. And there it was. Not a confession in legal language. Not something Marcy could put in a spreadsheet. But the truth. Plain and ugly between us. She knew. She knew my mind was still working. She knew I was scared. She knew I didn't want to sign. And she chose the path that made me easiest to manage. I handed her an envelope. Inside were divorce papers. A proposed settlement. She would receive a fair portion of marital assets, because I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life fighting over every spoon in the drawer. But the farm stayed with me. The company stayed with me. My retirement accounts were protected. And any attempt to challenge capacity again would reopen every financial record in court. She read it twice. This is all I get after 41 years? I looked around the room. At the fireplace stone we picked together, at the family photos on the mantel, at the old piano nobody played anymore. No, I said slowly. This is what you get after what you did. She stood up, angry now, real angry. Maybe because tears hadn't worked. You'll end up alone. I thought about that. Then I looked out the window and saw Caleb in the barn, throwing hay down from the loft with one hand and answering a call from his nursing program with the other. No, I said. I won't. Denise left without closing the gate. That used to bother me. Gates left open, lights left on, tools not put back where they belonged. I used to think keeping things in order meant keeping life from falling apart. I know better now. Sometimes life has to fall apart, so you can see who was holding it together and who was just holding out a hand. 6 months have passed since that hearing. My speech is better, not perfect. Better. My right hand still gives me trouble, but I can button my shirt most mornings if I take my time. I sold half the business to Luis through a structured buyout, and he runs daily operations now. The company is stable. The men kept their jobs. The name on the sign still means something. Brandon took a plea agreement on the financial side. Restitution, probation, and the kind of humiliation that follows a man into every room where people used to trust him. Melissa settled after Eli showed her attorney the invoices, the emails, and the recording. She doesn't call me daddy anymore. That's fine. Some words should retire when they stop being true. Denise signed the divorce papers in August. I kept the farm. And Caleb. Caleb moved into the apartment over the workshop. He says it saves money while he finishes school. I say the horses like him better anyway. On Sundays, we eat breakfast on the porch. Sometimes he studies anatomy while I read the newspaper. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Good company doesn't always need noise. Last week, I changed my estate plan one final time. The farm will go into a trust. Caleb will have the right to live here if he wants, but he won't be trapped by it. A portion of the business proceeds will fund scholarships for trade school students and nursing students in Williamson County. I named it after my father, not myself. My father believed a good legacy should give people tools, not just money. As for my children, the documents say what they need to say. $1 each. Not because I hate them, because inheritance is not a reward for waiting around the sickbed with a calculator in your hand. Family, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. When you get older, people start speaking around you. Instead of to you, they soften their voices. They trade glances. They call it concern when sometimes it's control. They call it planning when sometimes it's greed. They call you confused when the truth is, you simply stopped agreeing with them. Do not let anyone bury you while your heart is still beating. Get your papers in order. Choose someone honest before a crisis chooses for you. And if you love an older person, talk to them like they are still in the room, because they are. I still walk the fence line most evenings, slowly, with a cane. The lower pasture catches the sunset just like it did when I was young. The barn roof needs paint. The porch steps creak. The hydrangeas Denise planted still bloom every summer, whether she lives here or not. One night, not long ago, Caleb found me sitting by the pasture gate after dark. "You okay, Grandpa?" he asked. I nodded. He leaned on the fence beside me. After a while, he said, "Do you ever miss them?" I could have lied. But old men shouldn't waste time lying to the young people who still trust them. "Yes," I said. He looked at me. I took my time with the rest. "I miss who I thought they were." He didn't answer. He just stood there with me. That was enough. My family told a judge I was too far gone to speak for myself. They tried to take my company, my farm, my money, and my name while I sat silent in a wheelchair. They forgot one thing. Silence is not surrender. And the day I finally found my voice, they lost the only thing they ever really wanted from me: control. The people who truly love us don't measure our worth by what we can leave behind. They protect our dignity when we are weak and remind us we are still here. Russell's courage shows that even after betrayal, life can open a quieter, kinder door, one where gratitude, honest love, and one good heart can help us begin again.